So this is the Bokeh fragment shader. At the top here we just take in the uniforms that we'll need, which is the depth, the texture, and the camera parameters. We then set our number of samples to 13. The more samples, the higher the quality, but it's going to cost more. Very simple. Then here we have to calculate the offsets of the bokeh shapes, and then we're going to have the angle, we're going to have the offsets of the number of samples. Then we just take a radius of 0.5 as what we choose, and then we just convert from the polar to the Cartesian units, and then we just account for our aspect ratio here, so it doesn't look different on different aspect ratios, or it'll look proper on every aspect ratio. Then we create the interpolations here, so for every value for the number of samples that we're using, we set it to 0 and 1 and get our offsets. And then for our bokeh function, we have our bleeding bias and bleeding mulch, which is just determining how the bokeh is going to look like strength-wise and all that. And then we get our center samples, which we'll use down here, or down here, yeah. We just get them from the textures, from the uniforms of texture and depth, because we need depth because it's a depth of field which is needed to do bokeh shapes. Then we calculate these for our weighted average. We have color, which we just have vec4 zeros, and the total weight of 0 because we're going to add on to that later. And for every number of the samples, so per sample in this case it's 13 because of this, we will calculate our offsets, and we'll calculate the coordinates per each sample. So we have the sample coordinates, and then we just take in the texture coordinates and add the offset times the center pixel. And then here we do the texture sample. So we have the sample pixel and then the sample depth, again pixel for the texture, and then the depth because it's depth of field, we need to know how far away from it is. And then these are to, as it says here, prevent foreground bleed without preventing the background. So that what this is doing is making it so that the closer it is to you, the more that it will have the effects visible, and it doesn't bleed onto everything else. And then we add the sample to the weighted average of the that we have up here. So we have our total weight, and we have our color, and have that plus equal to the sample pixel times the weight, and then we add the weight to our total weight. So if we do multiple passes, it'll add on. And then we return the color divided by the total weight, and then that's what the bokeh function does. So in the main here we just have our angle, which we have here. This is an angle of 0, meaning it'll do it horizontally, and we get that equal to the x coordinate of the camera parameters, or the x value rather. And then we calculate the offsets with our function that we have up at the top, and then we return as a frag color, we have the frag color, and set that equal to our bokeh function right here, using the offsets as the number of samples.